love the work of the body positivity movement in helping to undo the damage that diet culture and the impossible beauty standards of traditional and social media these days. But there is one aspect that I feel is creating this much pain and disempowerment in our relationship with food in our bodies. No pain, no gain approach. This week, I share exactly what my opinion of what the body positivity movement gets wrong. And I propose my gentle alternative approach based on self-love and acceptance. Welcome to Joyful Eating, episode number 236. And today we're talking about what the body positivity movement gets wrong. But before we get to that, the best bite I had, I really love dates. The medjool dates, the really plump, thick ones. And at Aldi, I had really delicious ones. They're very inexpensive. On the weekend, I had this really beautiful dessert. It was double cream, really thick cream. It's about 50% fat. It's the business. Big bowl of double cream with medjool dates chopped up through it for sweetness and delicious. The carameliness and then the creaminess, it was really good and easy too. In this episode, first of all, I'll share the story behind why I wanted to go on a bit of a rant about body positivity. And then I'll share exactly what my opinion is that the body positivity movement gets wrong. And then I'll propose my alternative gentle approach. And then we'll wrap it up with a tiny step for you to experiment with this week. A few weeks ago, I was doing a launch, enrolling people in my joyful cooking class, where I teach people how to make healthy meals without recipes. And one of the things that in my marketing is that I talk about if you're eating healthier, there's a potential for that to have a positive impact on your clothes and how they fit and your waistline. And I got this email from one of my blog readers, and she was, Jules, she's, I love your recipes, but I can't believe you're doing this. You're feeding on people's self-loathing in order to change. It's the lowest form of marketing, slamming me for suggesting that if someone eats less processed food and eats more veggies and protein, that they're going to feel better in their body. And at first I was, oh my goodness, it felt like a punch. But then I thought about it and I was, wow. So this person has a belief that in order to change, the only way to do that is from this place of self-loathing, is that if someone wants to change, they have to hate themselves first. And I was, wow, that's so not my experience. And it got me thinking about that messaging from the body positivity movement. And so I wanted to do a podcast episode on this because I have had people in the Naturally Healthy Club who've said to me, wow, for a long time I thought I wasn't allowed to want to lose weight. It just because of this, you should be accepting yourself message, that it wasn't okay for them to even want to change. And that's pretty intense stuff. And of course, I totally get it. If you think that the only option to change your body and your weight is through punishment and self-loathing, then of course, I don't want that for you either, or for anyone. But the cool thing is that there is an alternative approach. The thing that I think that the body positivity movement gets wrong is this messaging that if you are going to love yourself and accept yourself, that you aren't allowed to want to change, that it has to be either you love yourself as you are and you accept yourself as you are, or not, or you only change from this place of non-acceptance and self-hate. And that it has to be this either or situation, that there's no middle ground. And most things in life, the actual truth of it is that self-love isn't an all or nothing proposition. And that I want you to think about, imagine you had a child and they were struggling to learn to read, and they were really struggling with it. And it was something that they weren't good at and they naturally weren't inclined to do. And it was this big problem for them. You wouldn't tell them you should just accept yourself and just stay illiterate. You can't change because we don't want you to hate yourself. You would encourage them you would give them extra support. You'd find ways to support them from this loving place and this belief that it's possible for you to learn to read. And we want you to learn to read because it opens up so many possibilities. And it would be okay. They wouldn't have to hate themselves in order to change. In fact, they would be getting more love and encouragement to change. And so let's apply that to our bodies and food, right? So if we want to change, if we're not feeling good in our bodies, if we're not feeling good in our clothes, and I'm not talking about wanting to be some size zero supermodel, if you just where you're at, it doesn't feel comfortable, it doesn't feel like the real you in that body, then of course we don't want you to start hating yourself. However, you don't have to stay there. It's possible so this is my alternative approach, is that it's actually possible to accept ourselves and love ourselves where we are and have the desire to change and do some work on ourselves to change ourselves, and that doing that work can coexist with the self-love and acceptance. And I actually propose that the self-love and acceptance that has to be there for the change to be sustainable. Because what will happen is if you don't love and accept yourself and you're changing because you think you're going to be able to love yourself when you get to a certain weight or you certain dress size, what happens is you get there and then you still don't love and accept yourself. And so that's not where we want to be. So we want to be in this place of, yep, I'm amazing as I am, and I love myself exactly as I am. And also, my knees hurt because I'm carrying too much weight. So what's actually would be really kind to me and to my knees is for me to do some work to lose that weight. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I think the thing that can be really helpful to the concept that can be really helpful in this is, and I got this from my marriage coach, is that acceptance does not mean agreement, right? So we can accept things and also want them to change, have the desire to change, be willing to do some work for them to change. But we can work on the change from this place of accepting where we're at. And my marriage coach, lovely lady by the name of Maggie Reyes, highly recommend checking out her Marriage Life Coach podcast if you're interested in doing some relationship work. That that is really the crux of it. So we can accept ourselves and want to change. And how do we go about doing that? Is actually learning to listen to our bodies instead of fighting against them. So instead of restricting and denying and counting calories or cutting out carbs or quitting sugar or doing whatever other, eating only carnivore or going completely vegan, rather than doing these external things, actually starting to pay attention to your body and pay attention to how food makes you feel in terms of the quantity that you're eating and also the types of food. And then when you're working with your body and you're learning to listen to your body instead of fighting against it and eating in a way that feels good for your body, what will happen is slowly over time, the weight will start to shift. And the other thing about the alternative approach that I have is also having healthy boundaries. So there's another narrative in the body positivity. If you're is that you shouldn't be restricting and you shouldn't be denying yourself, which is, yeah, I 100% agree that, yes, you should not, that's not helpful to be beating ourselves up and restricting and being mean to ourselves. However, that what can happen there is if you've got this belief that I shouldn't be restricting, therefore here I am eating my third croissant. So we don't want to let it balloon out into we're being overly permissive because that causes just as many problems, and that's just as harmful to ourselves as being too restrictive. Rather than it just swinging, letting this pendulum swing into being too permissive, we want to have some healthy boundaries around food. It's like we're not being self-indulgent, we're not being punitive and punishing ourselves, but we're finding this middle ground. Doing those two things, having healthy boundaries and tuning into our bodies and listening to our bodies, that's enough to be able to change. And it really doesn't have to be any harder than that. Your home play this week, when I work with people in Naturally Healthy Club, I give them home play rather than homework, is just to experiment with the idea that it's possible I can change from a loving place. It's possible I can change my body. It's possible I can change my relationship with food from a loving place. And just let that mull over in the back of your mind for a week and just see how that feels when you start opening your brain up to that possibility of change. And if you do want to change your relationship, if you did, after you've tried that on, if you go, yes, I really would like to change my relationship with food and I would like to lose some weight, with ease and from this place of self-love and compassion, then as I mentioned, learning to listen to your body is really the only way I know how to do that, how to make it happen. And it is possible for you to become this person who eats what you want and feels good in your clothes without just dieting, without restricting, without self-loathing. And to make this your reality, I invite you to come and play with us in the Naturally Healthy Club. We enroll twice a year. Check out the link in the show notes for more details. Have a beautiful week just playing around with that possibility, and I will see you next week.